political hide. I'm worrying about you, the voter that's watching this. And I'm voting yes because we're going to move on, we're going to do the job, we're going to work with staff, we're going to work with volunteers, and if anyone tries to put handcuffs on these volunteers, the four of us will be the first ones to step in front of them and say, take us.
Take us. Welcome back to Square Off. That was Republican Maricopa County Supervisor Thomas Galvin delivering an impassioned speech at this past week's county board meeting. A lawyer for Republican Recorder Justin Heap had just delivered a message that election workers and volunteers could face felony charges if they went along with an elections-related decision by the county board. The animosity between the county board and recorder is escalating to an alarming level just 5 weeks before the primary election. Can they work together to run a smooth election? Joining us to explain what's going on and what it means for voters is VoteBeat reporter Sasha Hupka. Welcome back to Square Off.
Thank you for having me.
I've done about a half dozen of these segments over the last 15 months over this battle, and it just keeps escalating. What led to this latest blow-up?
Justin Heap's attorney sent the board a letter that morning, right before that meeting started. And in that letter, Heap did two things. He asserted that he is the person who should have authority over where these drop boxes are placed. And he said that election workers who pick up ballots from drop boxes whose locations are set by the board could be criminally charged. And that's what led to this. Criminally
charged with felonies. It's right there in the letter, and you heard what Tom Galvin had to say about this. I want to remind folks, this is Republican versus Republican here, although different kind of breeds of Republicans, so to speak. Give us a little bit of the political backstory to all this that goes back to Justin Heap's election in late 2024.
They've been fighting ever since Heap came into office. I think the big thing to understand here is that Heap was elected with support from people who have amplified conspiracies of a stolen election in 2020. President Donald Trump's allies. Those were the people who supported him in his campaign. And you're, bringing him in, right, to a county government that made a national name for itself off of standing up to President Donald Trump after that election. So that's the difference right there.
And I believe you've reported, or others have as well, that Justin Heap is pretty close to these Republicans in D.C. and even the U.S. attorney here in Phoenix, Republican appointed. So it sounds like these drop boxes are a proxy for a larger fight that Tom Galvin and Supervisor Steve Gallardo believe might get worse.
I think it's a proxy for a bigger fight about election control. Ultimately, that's what this comes down to. And we've seen this fight now escalate and escalate and escalate ever since Justin Heap took office. I don't think that we should expect to see that get better anytime soon, especially now that you're not just talking about the electeds fighting with each other, you're also talking about staff fighting with each other during the Tempe jurisdictional election. And now you're talking about, right, Justin Heap threatening charges against staffers. That brings this into sort of a new era of this fight.
A new dimension. And so, we heard Tom Galvin say voters don't care about the, quote, inside baseball crap. They want to cast a ballot, see the ballot counted, get on with their life. So we're 5 weeks from the primary. Are the pieces in place right now to run a smooth election?
I think if you look at what happened earlier this week, the answer to that question is pretty clearly no. And I would say that the two entities at this point are acknowledging it. Justin Heap, in his statement after this meeting, was talking about how the board currently has an appeal in a legal battle that they've had going since last year over this exact issue of election control. And he talked about how that threatens this upcoming primary that's a month away. If you look at the letter that Kate Brophy-McGee and Debbie Lesko of the board sent to Heap after they got this letter from his attorney on the day of the meeting, they say in that letter as well that this current situation is untenable. in terms of going into this election. And so this doesn't spell good things. I mean, they're disagreeing on very basic functions of an election, like where to put drop boxes and who has the authority to put drop boxes somewhere. Like, you know, how do we handle a new voting option that is now in play for this election for voters? How do we handle that?
And stay with that. That new voting option could be very confusing for voters who show up at a vote center.
Yes, because voters now have an option. It's not a requirement, but an option of when they show up, instead of just dropping off their mailed ballot that's signed on the back, right, in a drop box, they could opt to stand in line at the polling site and to show ID and have their ballot counted more quickly as a result of that in Maricopa County. So this is a new option for voters. And they disagree as to how to implement it. Should there be one line? Should they all have to stand in the same line as the people who are voting in person at the polls? Should there be two? You know, these are all questions, right, that they can't entirely seem to come to an agreement on. Should they be talking to voters about this new option? Is signage enough to inform them? You know, these are all questions in play.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're talking very basic things here.
Very basic things, and it's a reminder of how lucky we were in 2020, 2022, and 2024 to have a recorder and county board that worked together largely. Some friction behind the scenes, but you did not see it when it counted. Do you think Supervisor Steve Gallardo and Tom Galvin are right when they say they believe Justin Heap is intentionally trying to undermine the election?
That is not for me to say. I think, though, that, you know, certainly they've voiced that opinion. There have been others that have voiced that opinion. I think it's notable, you know, Gallardo voiced that opinion, right? He's a Democrat, but so did Galvin, and Galvin is a Republican. This is a majority Republican board dealing with a Republican recorder.
All right, we're going to monitor that really closely. Before you go, you do have some new reporting on Democratic Attorney General Chris Mays wanting or demanding information from Justin Heap. Tell us about it.
So you might recall that Justin Heap had run a portion of Maricopa County's voter roll through a federal database that is run and administered by DHS. In doing so, he identified some voters who he says the system flagged as non-citizens. And so he had pledged at the time that he announced this to refer this to both the Arizona Attorney General's office and also the county attorney. Later on, he did refer it to the county attorney. They are now investigating, but the Attorney General's office now says he has to hand it to them too under state law. Furthermore, they're questioning the process that he's using to handle these voters and handle their registration status. And they are now threatening legal action if he doesn't start handing them names.
Oh, great. More fighting as we all get ready to vote. My goodness. Sasha Hupka, thanks so much for staying on top of it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. And before we go, it is Memorial Day weekend. Never forgotten, always remembered. That's the message blanketing the University of Phoenix grounds near I-10 downtown. Volunteers placed more than 10,000 American flags ahead of Memorial Day weekend. Each flag represents a life lost in service to our country. After the display, those flags will be donated and laid at military cemeteries, continuing the tribute to those who never made it home. That's our show for this week. Thanks very much to all of our guests, and thank you so much for joining us. See you back here next week.